Hello and welcome into the official Bengals, Talking Bengals, that is, pre-draft extravaganza episode. So we've got a full game today and a very special guest who took time away from his extremely busy schedule during draft time. Sean Clement from Sumer Sports. Sean, how are you?
Doing good. How are y'all doing? Glad to be here again. Talk a little bit about George Burrow.
The legendary George Burrow, that is. So we're going to be getting into a lot of different draft talk conversations. So that's why we got Sean here to keep us on track, make sure all of our facts are good, and to tell us when we're missing key and important things. Consumer Sports is your location for all your great draft information, as well as any kind of data or stats that you need on the NFL going forward. So if you haven't checked out Sumer Sports, you should do so in the very near future. We're going to start off with offensive line tonight. So the first person we're going to throw to the Wolves is going to be Zach. Let's hear all about Joel. Show goes on, Zach. Show goes on. He seems to be having technical difficulties, so we're going to do the filler subject real quick. Jake Browning was re-signed by the Bengals to a 2-year contract, so we will have JB6 and JB9 on the roster for at least the next few years. And Zach seems to be just who would have guessed that Zach would have some kind of issue?
I'll just fill in, right? Like as a University of Washington fan, I am contractually obligated to support Jake Browning in all of his endeavors. So I think this is a great signing. Absolutely no bias. No, but yeah, I do think for Cincinnati, it makes a ton of sense. Like he stepped in, he performed well with an otherwise pretty bad situation. And in general, I think people just underestimate how important that backup quarterback position is. It's really an insurance policy. You don't want to see the guy see the field, but God help you if he does. You want the right one, and a big part of having the right one is having one that is stylistically so similar to what you already run with your pro style offense. I think that's something that we saw, a couple of years back when Lamar got hurt, and the Ravens put in Tyler Huntley and could run basically the same kind of offense. Again, not nearly as well. Jake Browning is not Joe Burrow, so of course you're going to have that skill degradation, but it's good to have the same kind of player, and I think they've got that.
He gave us one of the best sound bites of last year. Should have never effing cut me. That was awesome. That was a great sound bite.
What? Yeah, it was the rankings, I believe, right?
It was right after the Minnesota game when he came back and won it.
Yeah.
Okay, Zach.
I love how the Bengals.
So, go ahead.
I have something to say here, Casey. You're not the only one with things to talk about.
Please go ahead.
I love how the Bengals. Yeah, I'm sure. I love how the Bengals Facebook page posted, "Yeah, we're not going to cut you. Don't worry." I absolutely love that. I love that.
That's a good one. So, Zach, are you prepared now?
Sorry.
No.
Parenting moments,
But
fun times.
Talking Bengals is more important than parenting.
Oh, 100,000%. If you ask anybody else other than, me. So, anyway, Joe Alt, probably one of the best offensive tackles to come out of this draft, in my personal opinion. Had a lot of stats. Only gave up 1 sack in 2023 for Notre Dame. I think he kind of brings some depth to the depth chart per se. If we bring him in, obviously we have both Browns now at the left and the right. So bringing in a guy like Joe Alt just adds depth just in case we run into issues like we did last year a la Lael Collins. So I think that's a key guy that I personally got to watch a little bit more in depth, with my fandom of Notre Dame. So that's what I have on Joe Alt. I'd take him at 18 if he was available. However, I think we lost Sean. Oh, there, maybe. No. Hey, there he is. I don't think I'd pull the trigger on anybody else on the offensive line. The other ones, that we're going to talk about here in just a second, they're great, but I don't know if I'd spend a first-round pick on them.
So for the Bengals, you're in a tricky spot, being down at 18. I basically think there's almost no shot that Joe Alt falls that far, which is unfortunate because I mean he is right there at the top. There's basically two good tackles in this draft in like our opinion, right? And it's Alt and Fashanu. Alt, it will not fall to 18, and Fashanu, you got less than a 20% chance according to our models. So as much as y'all really need a tackle, I don't know if you even get one in the first round. Like this might be a second round tackle year for y'all.
And that's what I liked about forgive me for the dude's name, that he covers the collegiate sport scouting for the Bengals. He said today in Duke Tobin's absence, and he said the first 3 rounds you're trying to draft a starter, and now we have an extra draft pick in the 3rd round to potentially use as trade bait or potentially pick up a 4th starter that our offense or defense desperately needs. So
No, I like that. That's good analysis. Nick, jump on into your guy.
Casey, why don't you say his name for me?
I'm going to pass on that. You go ahead.
what kind of Bengals podcast is this?
I'm going to say his name the best I can. I apologize for any mispronunciations. Talles Fuega. Sean, correct me because I know I'm wrong.
Is that right?
I mean, looking at his stats, 349 run block snaps, pass blocking snaps, 351 just in 2023. I mean, and then having no sacks on his record, not allowing any sacks. That's kind of a big deal, and only 2 hits. And even if we do fall down to him, I still think that's at least an option, but I don't think that, like what Sean was talking about, I think that a good idea would probably be, it'd probably be better served going 2nd or 3rd round for a tackle. I don't think that 1st round we're going to do any good, especially with the options that are going to be coming our way. But Mr. Fuega, coming out of Oregon State, he would be a good option, maybe 2nd or 3rd round, I think.
I think he's going to end up going higher. My concerns with him are he wins on his pass block sets, but he kind of wins ugly, and winning ugly on the pro side tends to go ugly. So that has me a little worried. He's much better run blocker than he is a pass blocker, and I just don't know if that y'all's offense is set up for that, or if he would have the time to develop. If you're drafting him, you're not drafting him for 24, you're drafting him for 25, essentially. Which there ain't nothing wrong with that, but it kind of depends on where you are in your team's build cycle.
I can agree with that.
So moving into the next offensive tackle on the list, Fontanu. So I probably messed that one up too. We're not here to pronounce things correctly. Sean probably could get me on that one. So I want to say he's a Pac-12 guy. So heard his name before. But I went more going off the combine type stats. So he's 6'4", 317 pounds, 34.5-inch arms. He's played left tackle and left guard. And some of his big accolades, he was first team All Pac-12 in 2023, and he was also third team All-American in 2023. And his relative athleticism score from the combine was 87. So he's an athletic guy. He's played multiple positions, not on the right side of the line, but he's somebody I've heard will go around the Bengals pick. So he's not somebody I think – he's somebody that could be there, so maybe they should take him. But the next guy I'm going to talk about is who I want them to take if he's there. So, Sean, what are your thoughts?
I agree with you as a developmental guy. That's not a bad pick. Again, you're picking kind of late to get one of the premier tackles. So I don't hate it. Like in the absence of elite talent, there's something to be said for just like take the athletic guy and give him time to hone his skills. It's not a terrible option.
So a lot of people that we're looking at here are not terrible options, but they're also not the best options. So let's get through the rest of the tackles here. And Josh, good luck. I know you've practiced this, so don't mess it up in your debut here.
I have listened to him say his name so many times. It's Olamoyua Fashanu. I have listened to it 3 times since we've started this podcast. No, he's probably the best tackle in this draft. I mean, let's see, they have him ranked production score 3rd overall tackles. But I pulled up his pass block win rate, 97%. He is a solid tackle. I think he's going to be gone before the Bengals get to 18. I don't see the Bengals trading up to get a tackle, and I would hope, honestly, the Bengals don't pick an offensive lineman, because if history tells us anything, first-round offensive linemen for the Bengals do not work out. Jonah Williams. So, see what Sean has to say about Olumwayu Fashanu.
I mean, I think at 18, Fashanu is the best tackle on the board you have a realistic shot at getting. It's still an outside chance. If the Bengals front office is locked in on this guy, they're probably going to need to entertain the trade up, maybe throw in that extra 3rd that y'all got to get up a couple of spots. I don't think you have to go up real far, but he's probably going to end up going in the neighborhood of 12 or 13. So if you can get into that neighborhood and he's still on the board, that could be your franchise tackle.
Yeah, that's not really a Bengal thing. They haven't done that since Kajana Carter, so I don't see that happening. I mean, they love to trade back. That's what makes you nervous. They are a big trade back team. And, I mean, this next guy, he's most likely not going to be available. There'd have to be something crazy that happens for him to be available, but Zach talked to us about him. Zach might have some breaking news here.
I was just making sure we're moving to the defensive tackle.
No, we're still on offensive tackle. You have J.C. Latham.
Oh, good Lord. J.C. Latham, a great Alabama player, but he reminds me a lot of Jonah Williams. So I don't know if I'm going to take that individual. I've watched him a lot down here. What do you mean no? What do you mean no? You don't think he looks like Jonah Williams? He looks like Jonah Williams to me.
Yeah, we've had enough Jonah Williams.
Oh, okay. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Enjoy your time. What was that song by Green Day? Are we even allowed to bring that up on here?
Bring it whatever you want to, as long as it's not over PG-13.
Oh, fair enough. Good riddance.
That's mean.
So, but yeah.
That's mean.
But yeah, that's what I feel like. That was the biggest thing about Alabama's offensive line struggles this last year. I watched, gosh, I don't even know this dude's name anymore because it's just been an abysmal season down here. Somebody help me out here. Nick, you watch SEC football. What's the quarterback's name? Milroe. There we go.
Yeah,
Oh
Milroe.
my gosh.
I was
Milroe
going to say
was on the
Milrose,
ground.
but
Yeah, Milroe was on the ground way too much and did not. The offensive line played terrible in the college football playoff, and it goes to show you can't win it with a quarterback, as we saw in the Super Bowl last year or 2021. Gosh, or whatever. Yeah.
Now, why are you bringing up all kinds of bad stuff? You're banned from talking for a minute, Sean. Any
Yeah.
thoughts on
I'm
what
gonna
you
go. I'm gonna go reload my Cola Zero.
No, I mean, Latham's a solid option. He's probably going to be there. So if you're sitting there in the war room, in the draft room the night before, trying to figure out what the heck you're going to do, decent shot that he may be there. My concern with taking, so I will just say, like, I think that the Latham's probably like in the second tier of tackles, in this particular draft. One of the things I think we get a little bit too wrapped up on when we talk about players is like ranking the players instead of bucketing the players into tiers. There's a lot of times, we'll argue about like, oh, who's the best or the second best? It's like, guys, if you got the top two, you're fine. The problem is if you don't have the top two, and that to me is kind of where you fall with someone like Latham. I think he's good, but I would be hoping for a little better in the first round. And if it's a choice between him and some of the other guys who might be at the board at different positions, just based off of historic failure rates and how much is a wide receiver 2 worth to you versus a tackle 3 and kind of working through all that mental math, I might look elsewhere.
Can't blame you there. So the next guy, the last offensive tackle we're going to be talking about, was one of the most intriguing people in the first, second round to me, because he's just a physical freak. He does not have a whole lot of game tape on him, and Nick's got more information. So Nick, tell us about Mims.
Yeah, I mean, Amarius Mims, overall grade from PFF, it was a 75.6. I mean, honestly, I think that's a pretty good grade, especially when you have almost 300 offensive snaps in 2023, and he only allows 1 hurry, no sacks, no QB hits. I mean, as an offensive lineman, that's your goal. Your goal is to have all those numbers as 0, and he's only got 1 on a hurry. And that's an incredible stat. I'd like to see like his penalties, like any like false starts, holdings, things like that, or like missed block assignments, things that Georgia would have had on him. I think that, depending on those, I think that possibly could put him up in top tier. Maybe 1 or 2, first or second round.
Yeah, I think he's probably a low first, early second guy. Like, he's probably not coming off the board before about the 20th overall pick, like right about where y'all are picking it there at 18. So I think there's a real good chance he's there, but there's also a reason he's still going to be there, and it's all the stuff you talked about. Penalties, hasn't played a lot of snaps, needs a lot of instruction. So you're going to need your O-line coach to coach him up. But one of the biggest things I worry about in the draft is, front offices talking themselves into I can coach him up.
That's always what you get worried about.
Line coach.
We're not Frank Pollock fans.
Frank.
We've said that many times. Frank needs to go, but we won't get into that tonight. We're optimistic. It's draft season, everyone. It's the time where optimism springs eternal.
Can we trade Frank for another offensive line coach?
Could he be part of the package deal?
On that one.
He can be part of the package deal. You don't have to give us anything for Frank. We just want something else. It's fine. All right. So
let's do drink vendors.
Really, Nick, Casey? You changed it back, you jerk.
Hey, truth hurts, man. Truth hurts. Anyways, moving into the defensive line here. So I get the benefit of being the person who writes the script for this show, so I get to pick who I want to talk about, and this is the guy I absolutely want 100%. I don't think he'll be there, but there is a chance. So you're saying there's a chance. It's Byron Murphy. So he's my height, only 6'1.5", but man, is he a physical freak after that. So 6.5 feet tall, weight 297 pounds. If I had 297 pounds on me, I would not be able to run as fast as he does, which is a 4.87. And he got 28 reps on bench press, which is very impressive. 32 and a 3/8-inch arm. So he actually has longer arms than a lot of the offensive tackles I looked up. Big accolades on him. Second team All-American 2023. Big 12 Defensive Lineman of the Year, though he did not get Big 12 Defensive Player of the Year, which actually went to his teammate, Tavondre Sweat, which is, to me, doesn't make sense. You're the Lineman of the Year, but you're not the Player of the Year. It is what it is. And first team All Big 12 in 2023. Athleticism score of 85. He is a freak. And in my opinion, this can be a little side topic. Sean, if you want to jump on here, the Bengals would be better benefited from getting a defensive tackle as opposed to an offensive tackle, because they made the Super Bowl with a bunch of blind people on the offensive line, but they had a great D-line at that point.
The thing about premier defensive tackles is they do not hit free agency. Like, it just does not happen. There are certain positions that you can look at and be like, I can patch the hole in free agency. And for like right offensive tackle, that's one of those positions. You can get a right tackle in free agency. One of them comes up that's serviceable every year. Now, whether or not you want to pay him is a different discussion, but it's available. A premier, like very good defensive tackle, the only way you get that guy is through the draft. It's the same thing with like wide receivers, right? No wide receiver one ever hits the free market because if a team knows they're going to lose a wide receiver one because of contract reasons, they trade them before they can lose them so they get something out of it. So, I think Murphy would be an excellent pick, there at 18. I think you got a slim chance he's still there. His draft stock has been rising pretty quickly. Overall, I think this is a pretty darn good edge class, but I think it's a pretty weak defensive tackle class, and that may make him go earlier than he should.
I didn't think he'd still be there, but I can hope, right? Just there's a chance.
It's not zero.
It's better
So
than
you're
zero,
saying
right?
there's a chance.
All right, Josh, stop my dreaming and start talking about Newton.
Well, actually, the first two mock drafts I did, Byron Murphy was.
Podium Automotive is a proud sponsor of Talkin Bengals. In Greater Cincinnati, it's Podium Automotive for all your auto needs. Skilled technicians, quality service you can trust, and fair prices. Tell us Talkin Bengals sent you and get 5% off all services. Schedule your appointment today on Facebook at Podium Automotive or call 859-869-0097.
There, so I actually picked him in those two, but my computer wasn't loading, so I had to restart, and then he's not here anymore. So now I'm just going to talk about Jerzon. Jerzon Newton.
Also known as John.
Yeah, Johnny. Yep, I see that. Johnny. Yeah. So he's got some pretty good accolades as well. First team Associated Press All-American, Big Ten Conference Defensive Player of the Year. Finalist for the Nagurski Trophy, nation's top defender. So, I mean, he's got some pretty good accolades. He's got, let's see, this is on NFL.com prospect stuff. 83 is his grade. It's a pretty solid grade. I mean, he's got some room to grow with that, but I mean, he's got a lot of accolades to go with the production he's put up. See, I'm showing total of in 2023, 52 solo tackles, or 52 tackles in total, 26 solo, 7.5 sacks, a fumble, and a fumble recovered. 2 passes defended. So, I mean, he's got some pretty good stuff going for him. And in college, I mean, those numbers, they're not too bad. I think he would be a solid choice. If he's available, if Byron Murphy is not, defensive line is definitely, I think, where the Bengals need to go, because that was the weakest point of the team aside from safety. Because there was only one person on that defensive line that was any good last season, and Hendrickson cannot do everything by himself. With DJ Reader going down, they had nothing on the defensive line in the center. So getting somebody to clog up that center hopefully will bolster that defensive line. But go ahead.
No, I mean, I think Johnny Newton's a great player. I do think his stats got just a little inflated on that Northwestern game. Like 3 of his 10 sacks for the year came from that one game. So, but even if you say he's a 7-sack player in his last year of college, that's still pretty darn good, especially at tackle rather than edge rusher. If you're getting consistent pressure up the middle, that's a game changer. And yeah, I would not be unhappy with him at 18. I think he'll still be there. He has not garnered the hype that Murphy has because he's coming from a team that's not nearly as good. So he's kind of a little bit of a late first sleeper, I would say. But Yeah, my hot take is he's probably better than Murphy.
Ooh, I like that. Hot take coming in. All right, Zach, talk to us about your defensive tackle.
So I have Braden Fisk. So with Fisk, he is a 5-year player, redshirted due to injury during his sophomore season at Western Michigan. Spent all 2019 to 2022 over there, and then jumped over to the pretty dominant Florida State defense of 2023. Started all 13 games for them to include the bowl game. Had 17 solo tackles, assisted on 26. 9 of those were for loss and 6 sacks. His bolstering stats for his overall career, 93 solo tackles, 36 for loss, and 19 and a half sacks. Granted, I get it. Western Michigan plays in the MAC, but he did enough to show that he was worthy to play, and not only play, but play successfully in that dominant Florida State defense last year. To highlight his best game that he had was probably Clemson. He had 6 total tackles, but that wasn't the biggest game as far as sacks goes, which that was 3 against Louisville in Week 13 in their bowl game. Pretty impressive. Louisville had a pretty good season last year as well. They had a couple, minor losses. Kentucky, just saying. But yeah, guy, if Newton's not there, this is probably another guy, the defensive line on the interior side that I'm looking at.
Yeah, I think if you're coming down to 18 and let's say Newton and Murphy are off the board for whatever reason, I think Braden Fisk is a great option for the second round. I would not take him at 18. Just because I do think there's a little bit of question marks on can he put up, consistent production. And I just think he grades a little lower, but still a first 2-day guy. Just not a day 1 guy, in my opinion.
That shows right here where the disparity of talent is. Offensive line, everybody we're talking about is probably a first-round draft pick or very early second. You have 2 legitimate first-round draft picks at D tackle, and then everybody else is a day 2, day 3. I mean, even after the next guy that Nick's going to talk about, there's a severe drop after him as well. So, Nick, go ahead and talk.
Yeah, so talk about Rook or horror.
I did this on purpose. I'm sorry.
Yeah, you gave me the best ones, Casey. I appreciate that. But Rook is definitely definitely a vocal leader. According to Clemson's football website, they call him a vocal leader. He also earned all AC selection by the league, also all ACC honors for second team by College Football Network. And I think one of the most impressive is all ACC academic team selection. So he's obviously smart. And to boot, I mean, the man is also credited with 97 tackles, and more than a quarter of those tackles were for a loss. That's big at defensive tackle. That's something that we need in Cincinnati. We need a defensive tackle who can do that. So I think when you look into, over a quarter of his tackles are for a loss. He's got 12 sacks as a defensive tackle, which, in 4 years, yeah, okay. But, essentially, more than a quarter of your tackles are for a loss. I think that's kind of a big thing to look at for me.
Yeah, I think Rojo is I think he's a real, I would say, a better run stuffing defensive tackle than a pass rushing defensive tackle. And there's nothing wrong with that. You definitely need that, especially in the division y'all are playing in, right? You know the Steelers want to run the ball. You sure as hell know the Ravens want to run the ball. So you need somebody who can stop the rush up the middle. And so that is going to be very valuable to get you to the playoffs. My concern is that once you get to the playoffs, it's a lot less valuable because now you're not fighting for your life against, Baltimore and the Steelers necessarily. You may be playing Baltimore, but you're also playing the Bills and the Chiefs, and they're not running up the middle on you. And so that would worry me a little bit. But someone like Orojo is going probably in the third. So you don't have to rush to get him either. If you picked him up in the second, it's probably a reach. You get him in the third, and he's adding solid value and taking away that up the middle run for one of those 2 third-round picks. I think that's a win.
Exactly where I was going to put him, Sean. I 100% agree with what you're saying.
We'll see where he falls on our mock drafts here in just a little while as the simulators get fired up. So we're going to move into wide receiver, and for once, I will throw myself on the knife of the guy that nobody really wants, but they're going to have to talk about because he's fast, and that's Xavier Worthy. And he's better than John Ross, I feel like. He's not just a flaky guy that came out of, one season. He had some longevity. He had some promise, but still, 5'11", 165 pounds. Zach's bigger than 165 pounds. So, that's telling you something right there. That, you're getting a guy who's not very tall, and he's very, very small. But he can run a 4.21, so he can outrun everybody. He can also jump a 41-inch vertical. Some of those accolades I mentioned before. So first team All Big 12 in 2021, Big 12 Freshman of the Year 2021, second team All Big 12 in 2022, and a third team All-American this year and first team All Big 12 this year. Athleticism score is almost perfect. It's 98. So very athletic, but the speed is going to make somebody take a flyer on him. If I had to put money on it, I'd say maybe the Panthers or somebody like that who just doesn't really know what they're doing is going to say he fast, which is the problem that the Bengals made when they drafted John Ross. He really fast. We're going to draft him. And we talked about John Ross a little bit last week. Sorry, I'm getting into it. But, he had some moments. That Seahawks game, Zach Taylor's very first game, John Ross looked like a dude. Unfortunately, for every other game of his career, he did not. So I'm not going to take the bait on this one. Speed's great, but I would not spend a first or a second-round pick on this guy. Sean, what are your thoughts?
At most, I'm taking him in the second round. I wouldn't take him in the first round for a lot of the same reasons you listed. He's fast as heck, right? Coming into the combine, we had him, based off our on-field 40 estimates, as going to be the fastest guy at the combine, and he was by a long shot. So that's never been in question. The question is if he's so darn fast, where's the production? And that kind of scares me. I'm worried that at the NFL level he gets bullied by NFL corners. Is he big enough and strong enough to fight through contact? Is he going to succeed at that next level? That I think is more of a question mark. I sure as heck wouldn't take him at 18. I know that. If he's still there if he's still there at your second round pick, maybe. I think y'all have bigger needs, but I would at least consider it in that mid-second area.
And so most of these receivers we're going to be talking about are pretty much day 2 guys. That's what we're trying to look at. If they pick a receiver in the first round that's not a Harrison descendant, they're wrong, and there's no way he's going to be there. So Josh, talk to us about more day 2 receivers.
Well, let's start off with Adonai Mitchell.
It's the only time on the first guy's name. Wow.
We're from Kentucky, guys. Don't worry.
Yeah, Adonai. That's his nickname is Ad. Let's just go with Ad Mitchell. He's going to be, of the 2 guys I was going to talk about, he seems like the best of the 2 choices. He's got, in his 14 games last season, he's got 845 receiving yards, 55 receptions, 11 touchdowns, 15.4 average. And his 11 touchdowns led the team. So he's got the speed with a 4.34 second 40-yard dash. So he's got the speed to, be on the opposite side as Chase. If we just have those two guys running down, streaking down the sidelines, that's going to be scary for any defense to try to figure out how to game plan. I think like I said, of the two guys I have, he's going to be the most accomplished. As a team that went up against Washington in the playoffs last season. He's had a very good college career, and he is coming out as.
Take your career to new heights with Constructive Curiosity. Whether it's career coaching, mental performance training, or business management consulting, Constructive Curiosity has the insight to get it right. Visit constructivecuriosity.com to get started today.
Senior, like he would be my choice, not for day one. He would be a day two at the most.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's right. At least with Mitchell, like you're getting a guy who's 6'2", 205. Like at 6'2", 205, running in the low 4.3s. Like that's a good physical combo, and you can at least live with it. Had 10 touchdowns last year. One of the things that, and this is not really a me question because I'm more on the data and analytics side, and this is much more of a coaching question. One of the head scratchers I have about all of these guys coming out of Texas on the offensive side is why the heck couldn't they score in the red zone? And so it's like, was that a scheme issue? Like, is that a Sark issue, or is that a Mitchell and Worthy issue, or was that a Ewers issue? Like that's kind of where my head's at with a lot of these guys, and where I think teams are going to be focusing is like, okay, why? Like you've got good downfield production, but then when you needed to punch it in, you couldn't. Why?
Are you alluding that we should get an Archie Manning?
What's that?
I said, are you alluding to that Arch Manning should be starting at Texas?
Oh, maybe.
Oh, different podcast. I'm sorry.
Right, different.
Don't.
I mean, words threw me for a second. I forgot where I was. I blacked out.
Don't do that, Bernsey. But I do think that Sean brings up a really good point. I think, honestly, in my opinion, Sean, I think it's a lot of coaching. I think that's the reason why they couldn't score in the red zone. I think it was a difference. It was a combination between play calling and really the blocking schemes. I don't think they were putting in the right package on the blocking schemes.
I will say the one thing that would have me enticed about Mitchell is any receiver that gets multiple touchdowns against, an always like perennially good Alabama defense, that at least catches my attention. And you're not spending super high draft capital on him there in the second round. That may be worth it.
Yeah, so now we're ready to move on to our next person. So, Burns, take us away.
So I've got Xavier Legette, or Leggett, depending on however you want to pronounce it. This is a 5-year player right out of USC, but the good USC of South Carolina, because we don't like the guys out west. Started pretty much every year. Only played 6 games for South Carolina in 2020. That was the only year that he had. I think that was the year he got hurt, if I'm not mistaken. It's not annotated here. But 2023 had 71 receptions for 1,255 yards, 7 touchdowns. And then also can return kicks, which is actually a nice thing to have because, we just re-signed Travion Williams. For whatever reason we did that for. But if you go get a guy like this and then he has kick returns of, 213 yards on 10 returns, it's pretty good yardage, I would say, averaging at least 21.3 yards there a return. Not much of a punt returner, but a guy that can get back there pretty quick, has a pretty decent size, 6'1", 217, excuse me. I didn't see his stats from the combine, but has a lot of upside. He's not an LSU player for sure, but I'm just now reading Casey's name for you, but he definitely comes a lot. He brings a lot to the table, and it's definitely a guy there I think you could go after in the second round.
So his combine measurables, 6'1", 221 pounds, ran a 4.37 with a 1.51 10-yard split, 40-inch vertical, and 126-inch broad jump. So, did fine at the combine. The thing that is enticing to me about Xavier Legette is the South Carolina offense this last year was not good, and he still put up decent numbers. And so it's like, okay, if you can do that under the worst of conditions, let's see what you can do when you don't have to be the guy because you're across the field from Chase, and your quarterback situation is worlds different, right? And then you brought up a good point with the kickoffs. One of the things we shouldn't lose sight of is the NFL is moving to the former XFL's kickoff setup, and so there is some actual importance there to getting a kickoff return guy now, where the last couple of years you could kind of ignore it. So if you got somebody who has some kickoff return experience and can put up some production there, that's worth something.
Most definitely. And Spencer Rattler is definitely not Joe Burrow. So the fact that he's putting up games, I was pulling up his stats here. It looked like North Carolina, even though they lost, he had 9 receptions for 178 yards with Spencer Rattler. Can you imagine what those stats would be like if he was playing with Joe Burrow? Granted, North Carolina is not the Ravens or Pittsburgh or anything of that nature, but that was a team last year that North Carolina was de la creme of the ACC, right? Like, especially week 1, everybody was talking high, how well they were going to do. They had Drake May at the helm. So the fact that was the turnout on the other side is pretty amazing. Then he had 217 against, a Jacksonville State, 120 against Vanderbilt, 2 lower class schools. But then, he plays Florida, 5 catches for 110. So, and Florida had
against Georgia. I mean, that counts for something.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I skipped over that one, but yeah, still 71 yards on a Georgia defense that was number 1 practically all year except for the SEC championship game.
Hi, Nick. Let's hear who you got.
Keon Coleman. Since we're doing his biometrics.
You said it
here.
right. I'm proud of you.
I did. I'm so thankful. I did it. So Keon Coleman, 6'4", 215, coming out of Florida State. Definitely somebody that I don't think that we should overlook. He does have punt returning capabilities. So he can return kicks. He's also a bigger stature guy, someone who can probably withstand the hits. And looking at his receptions, I mean, in 2023, he had 50 receptions for 658 yards, averaging 13.2 yards a catch with 11 touchdowns. That's pretty good. Averaging more than 10 yards a catch. I don't think that you can gloss over that. I mean, if he comes up, in the 3rd round with that third round pick that we have, I don't think that would be a bad pick to choose. I don't think he'd be a bad one to choose at all.
Coleman's an absolute steal in the 3rd round. I mean, you're talking about a guy who got 6 yards after the catch per reception last year. That is exceptionally good. I think that Florida State had its problems on offense, and then of course their quarterback got injured, and there's all sorts of controversy about that with the playoffs, right? But Coleman, I think is a guy that if you're sitting there and, I might even take him in the 2nd, to be honest with you. Just depends on how the team feels about all of, is there anything off field? Of course, we haven't really gotten into that with any of these prospects, but he's one of those guys where I kind of look at him and I'm like, why isn't he being talked about more? Because I think this guy is better than some of the other receivers we've already talked about.
No, it's good insight there. And I'm going to go ahead and pick up the mic for my second receiver to talk about. The product of Georgia, Ladd McConkey. So he's 6 feet tall, 186 pounds. Speed's pretty good. So he's a 4.39, so sub 4.4, 36-inch vertical jump. So not quite as high as the guy we don't want to draft because he's tiny. He's very smart. So he was a finalist for the William B. Campbell Trophy, which is basically the academic Heisman. Very smart guy, all freshman SEC team. And he played really well during his time there. And he's also been called slippery as a punt returner. So, hey, if you slip around punt return, this new kickoff rule, it could work out well. So any thoughts on Ladd McConkey?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things you got to keep in mind, 2023 was probably the worst year we've seen out of Ladd McConkey in the last couple of years. He was a lot better in 2022 and in 2021. I mean, 2021 is 5 touchdowns, 7 yards after the catch per reception, basically the same in 2022. If Ladd McConkey had a better injury history, he's a first rounder. I think.
Guess what? You just proved that advertising on podcasts works. Reach thousands of local listeners each week and grow your business. Reach out to Talkin Bengals today to find out more by emailing talkinbengals@gmail.com.
Scares teams off of McConkey is he going to heal up, and how does he recover from everything he's going through right now? Because, I mean, good Lord, you need somebody who can produce in the slot. This guy is the dude, but he's got to stay on the field first.
Injuries was my big reason why I did the 2 thumbs down. You have to have that consistency on the field.
The most important ability is availability. All right, Josh, bring us home so we can get into our 3-round mock drafts here.
All right, so I've got Devontae Walker, another North Carolina guy. He got some pretty solid numbers. I mean, he's looking at a 4.36 40 time. He only played in 8 games last season, but he's got 699 receiving yards on 41 receptions. That's 17-yard average per reception on 7 touchdowns. He's 6'3", 200 pounds. So he seems like a pretty solid option. I don't know anything about him. I don't think I've ever heard of his name until, I was going to talk about him. So, but looking up his stats, I mean, I wouldn't be unhappy with this guy. He's had multiple well over 100-yard games. On 2 of them didn't even have 10 receptions. That was just last season. So, I mean, he seems like a pretty solid option, but we'll see what you think about him.
I think Walker would be a decent, 4th round guy. I probably wouldn't take him with either third round pick. I think he probably can produce. There's probably something there, but I'm just not as high on him. I think the level of, so if you look at his raw counting stats, you're like, okay, there's some decent production here, but I'm worried about the fact that basically all of these great games come against pretty poor other teams, right? You got to go all the way back to 2022 to really have a good game against a team of note where he put up over 100 yards against Georgia. That has me a little bit worried. But if you
but he also played for North Carolina.
Yeah, he did, but I don't know. It's a weird. I would probably pass on to the 3rd.
I like it. Well, you're going to get your opportunity because now we're getting into our mock draft simulator. We all have different mock draft simulators up that we're going to be working with. The way we're going to do this is basically we don't have one board we're working off of. We're all working off different boards, but you cannot pick a player that was selected by somebody else. And we're going to do all 4 of the Bengals' first 3-round draft picks here. And it's going to be a snake. So Sean's going to start us off. I'll tell you who's got the next pick. Then Josh, when it gets to you, you get to double up last of the first round, first of the second round, and then keep going that way. So Sean, you are up first. You're on the clock. Who are you picking at 18?
Oh Lord, if I'm lucky or if it's something realistic.
You got to bring up the simulator. Let it tell you who's available.
Yeah. Let's see, I'll look here.
While he's doing that, are we accepting trades or no trades?
No trades. That makes it too complicated for this exercise.
Gosh. Now I'm looking at everybody who's available here. You know what? I will probably go with. Yeah, hell with it. I'm going to take Mims.
Mims. All right. So Mims is off the board for everyone now. I have Johnny Newton there, so Byron Murphy unfortunately did not fall in my board. Maybe it did in somebody else's, but I'm going to take Newton. And Nick, you're on the clock.
And Newton wasn't on my board.
Let's see. I was looking for offensive line. Fashanu from Penn State. I'm not saying that first name.
All right, Zach, you're on the clock.
All right, so we went Mims. Casey, who did you go with?
Johnny Newton.
Newton. And then Nick went offensive line. So my board through the Pro Football Network, number 1 is Dallas Turner, the edge from Alabama. Fatanau from Washington, the offensive tackle. Mims is here. Newton's here. Byron Murphy is here as well. But since we cannot repeat,
If Dallas Turner is there, you got to pick him. There's no way he falls that way.
that's what I mean. Right. I mean, I don't know why but it doesn't make sense either in the needs of the Bengals, because he's an edge guy versus the needing a defensive tackle. But yeah, if he's there, obviously that would probably be the pick. But for the sake of argument of draft needs and the realisticness of Dallas Turner not being there, I'm going to go Byron Murphy.
All right, Murphy is off the board. So, Josh, you got the next 2 picks.
The next 2. So I cannot pick Newton. I cannot pick Mims. I'm not picking a receiver. Go with Troy. Hold on. Did someone already pick Troy Fatanu?
Nope. I don't.
Yeah.
Nick, you took the other guy. Right?
What?
You took the other F. I can't. Fashanu, not Fatanu, correct?
I took Fashanu.
Fashanu. I got Fatanu. So close, but now I'm loading.
So, yep. And now we wait for Josh. Play some Jeopardy music. It's not in the budget yet, so Zach, you have to sing our Jeopardy music for us.
I'll be right.
All right. Now I can pick. Let's see. I'm going to pick a defensive tackle. Best one available would be Tavondre Sweat. That's going to be my choice.
Tavondre Sweat's off the board. Zach, you are up.
All right. So at pick 49, the top 5 available is Zach Frazier from West Virginia, Adissa Isaac, the edge from Penn State, Jalen Polk, the wide receiver from Washington, which I don't think we talked about, but pretty intriguing pick there. Nick's favorite guy, Rook. And then a 48, Cooper Beebe, the offensive guard from Kansas State. But because we talked about him and I got to talk about him a little bit more, Xavier Legette is there at number 6. It would be the second need available for the Bengals based on this big board. So I'm going to go ahead and fulfill that.
You took who I was going to take. Dang it. All right, Nick, who do you got?
Took Xavier Worthy in the second round.
Ooh, going for the speed. All right. What's up to me now? The top person on my board is Christian Haynes, offensive guard from UConn. I've not looked into him at all. Guard's not a position I'm looking at that much. He played at UConn, so that's wrong sport. If this is basketball, I'd probably say that makes me feel a little bit better. And, of course, I went defensive tackle in the first round when Rook is here again in the second round. Zach just took my guy I wanted to pick as a receiver. I don't know. Sean, do you have any insights on Christian Haynes? I'm phoning the expert here to see if can he play tackle at all? Is there any possibility?
Well, I would have to look him up because I was looking at my simulator and he was not an option. Said it Haynes.
Christian Haynes, extremely explosive, energized mover off the snap. We don't really need interior offensive line.
Yeah, I probably wouldn't take him in that. Yeah, I'm not even. Oh, because I've got my filter set to tackles. That's why it's not showing up.
There's so many guards on here. This whole round for me, sorry guys, it is literally all guards until you get to.
I probably wouldn't be taking Christian Haynes there in a second.
Well, I'm going to be weird, and I'm going to go ahead and do a double up. I'm taking Rook. He's off. Taking him. Double up. All right, Sean, you got the next two picks.
All right. Let's see. Sitting here at 49, best players available are Franklin, Coleman, Burton, and Melton, defensive corner out of Rutgers. I'm going to go ahead and say Coleman. I'm going to put my money where my mouth was. Said that he was underrated, so I'll take Keon Coleman from Florida State.
All right, and you got the first pick of the third round.
Yep, advancing to 80 now. And what I hoped did happen. Burton is still on the board, so could double up there at wide receiver if I want, but Burton, McMillan, and then Johnson, tight end out of Penn State, are my three best. We already took wide receiver though, so I'm gonna take tight end Theo Johnson.
All right, let me mark that one down. And I have Roger Rosengarten. It's my number one person on my board right now. I've heard a few good things about him. I don't have an offensive tackle. I doubled up a defensive tackle, so that's who I'm going to take. So Rosengarten, we can all call him Rosenbagger or whatever other fun nicknames we want to call him from Rookie of the Year. And that's going to bring us back to Nick.
Darn it, Casey, you took my darn third rounder. Hold on a second.
Here for you.
Darn you. Let me get it going. Hang on a second for me. Oh, darn you, Casey. So the safety out of Georgia, Javon Bullard.
All right. That's who we're claiming. Zach?
So my big board is kind of all over the place. There's a couple linebackers in here, a couple guards. Chris Abrams-Strain, the corner from Mizzou, is on here. Devontae Walker's on here. Blake Corum from Michigan's on here. Andrew Phillips, the corner from Kentucky, is on here. Down there with the 88th ranked player available right now, Jeremiah Trotter Jr., which we talked about last week. But the guy I think I'm going to lean towards is the defensive tackle, Mason Smith. Dalton Miller on here talked about his profile, saying that he's the most frightening frame in the draft since Sean Oakman, and his game's going to resemble that of Stephon Tuitt and David Irving. He's apparently freakish athletic, and he's got improved hands with a little experience playing over the last season. So that is who I'm going to take. Mason Smith, defensive tackle from LSU, bolstering that defensive line, making it a little competition.
All right. So, Josh, you got the next two, and then this is the last one of the original third, and then the comp pick.
All right. Yeah, I had to redo mine because it closed.
Looking for a great book? Check out Once Left the Field of Valor. When Damien Shaw finds a blood-stained envelope after a battle, he is struck by a series of debilitating flashbacks that threaten to unhinge him. The letter leads him on a grueling journey of penance to present it to its intended recipient. This addicting page-turner is filled with action, suspense, romance, and perseverance. It will keep you on edge to the very end and leave you wanting more. Get your printed edition or ebook today on Amazon.
So I'm going to round 3 now. Give me just a second, guys. Hey, does anybody want to talk about anything fun?
Things. So, Sean, what's the worst part of preparing for the draft?
Oh gosh, the worst part is that everything changes up until the last second. That's the hardest part. There's always some prospect doing something dumb, getting a DUI at the last second. Private investigator comes up with something. New information comes in. Thank God though I'm not working for a team, because the worst part about working for a team is if you have a turnover in your coaching staff after you've prepared your draft board, and then they change your position set, and it's like, well, is this guy a 4-3 defensive end or is he a 3-4? Oh, well, do we have a nickel safety, or do we call him a nickel cornerback? Oh, well, do we call our guys as defensive ends, or do we call them outside backers? Do we use a fullback or not? Do we use a tight end H? And it was like, I don't miss messing with all that stuff at all. You get to work at the league level. You don't have to worry about any of that stuff. The positions are the positions.
That sounds like a nightmare.
It's
Josh, you ready to roll?
Yeah, I'm ready. Has anyone picked Zach Frazier? Because while you all were talking, I was trying to load this back up.
He's available.
Okay, cool. Yeah, that's what I'm picking. Round 3. Now let's go to the compensatory pick. In just a second. Cue the music. All right. We are here. So I'm going to go with, kind of going with either wide receiver, or we would need some more safety help. Cole Bishop is probably going to be my choice. Get a safety, someone to just help provide some backup back there. So yeah, I'm going to go with Cole Bishop as my 97th pick.
All right. So, Zach, who's going to be your last pick here?
I'm going to go completely off script here, and I'm going to go punter. No, I'm just kidding. Although I might need a punter this year. I'm just saying. So my big board right now, a bunch of different ACC and Big Ten players that are out here. One that kind of slipped all the way to 97, which I'm kind of surprised, is the linebacker Junior Colson. I talked about taking Jeremiah Trotter if he was available here last week in our mini pre-camp. So having some linebacker help to help Logan Wilson and a couple of the other guys on that stretch. I think Junior Colson, if he happens to fall as far, as a guy that I'd go after. He's the 70th rated overall player on the Pro Football Network.
All right. Nick, who's going to be your last pick here?
Mason Smith, defensive lineman out of LSU.
So no talking, just boom, right to it. We just had him, didn't we?
Did I just pick him?
Yeah, Zach did. We had Smith defensive tackle. From Zach on the last round.
Yeah, well, whatever.
Good
We got the
try.
same pick. Move on.
Good try.
Move on.
He's so good, they both want him.
It's not.
It
how
was a
this
great.
works.
It was a great late third rounder to pick. You couldn't pass him up.
Do you want a different pick? Or are you just gonna say I'm
Sure.
not gonna pick?
Let's say Malik Benson, one of the wideouts for Florida State.
All right. See, I'm going with a different Florida State wideout, Johnny Wilson, still available on my board. So that's what I'm going with. And Sean, bring us home with the last pick of our mock drafts.
Oh gosh, I'm torn. I'm gonna go. So I'm gonna take a chance on a young guy who's really only got 1 year of true starting, but he's only 21. He put up 9 sacks last year, and so I'm gonna roll the dice. I'm gonna roll the dice on Austin Booker, outside backer from Kansas.
I like that. Kansas actually had a decent team for Kansas last year. So, I mean, that's not saying much, but I mean, fun story on them real quick. When I worked at Army University, I remember the athletic director said we could all do meetings at Kansas football games because we could, separate ourselves at least 6 feet apart because nobody was going to be there. Anyways, I digress. Let's jump into more fun topics. Before we get out of here, we've used a lot of Sean's time. It's a very busy time of year for him. So, Sean, before we go, we may have a couple quick questions for you. How many blue chip players do you think are in this year's draft?
Shoot. Of course, I just closed out my board. So if I'm remembering correctly, we're somewhere around. I want to say somewhere around the mid-20s of blue chip players. So decent. It's a decently strong draft class overall this year. Part of that is buoyed by the fact that there's actually more than one quarterback worth taking. We've had some drafts recently where there were none worth taking, and so that weakens it quite a bit. This draft class though is I'm looking forward to the next one because it'll be like our first one with all of the COVID players washed out, and so it'll be like our first normal draft class in years. Just especially you get into late rounds, there's just so many older guys, and it's a weird one.
Gents, any other questions for Sean while we have his knowledge and wisdom here for us?
Yeah. So I have ran several different mock drafts that show Brock Bowers dropping to 18. I know that that's probably a low probability.
Yeah.
But in that case, do we take Brock Bowers?
It would be tempting at 18, right? Like if you guys were picking at 8, I'd slap your hand away from the phone. Like, don't take a tight end at 8. The surplus value is terrible. One of the problems with taking a tight end high is you're really trying to, when you're drafting a player, you're trying to draft them and their second contract, right? That's what a lot of GMs focus on. Well, second contracts for tight ends don't tend to be particularly high anyway. But then, a lot of the rumors you hear about Brock Bowers, like, oh, well, he's the best tight end to come out in years. And so this one's different. I'm a little skeptical of that. I get a little bit worried just based off of tight end drafting history. Most tight ends that go in the first round don't re-sign with the team that drafts them. The surplus value is not particularly high. But I think we've seen in the AFC how much of a difference maker a great tight end makes, right? Like if he is a Travis Kelce or to a lesser extent a Mark Andrews, somebody who can receive and block, that is a rare and extremely valuable combination. The problem has been that teams are just generally kind of bad at identifying those guys coming out of college, and so that has me a little on the worried side.
So Burns, I know you have a question and your love of Gold Star.
Nobody likes Gold Star, Casey. Stop.
Yeah, not even you. You don't like Gold Star. All right.
You know the hell
My
Gold Star
question.
is.
Sorry, it's a Cincinnati chili debate. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. Okay. Y'all can keep that cinnamon chili. I'm out.
The sauce,
words.
it's not real chili, but it.
You
Whatever.
missed our episode like 3 episodes ago. We talked about you can't call it chili. It's not chili. It's its own unique dish. It's not a. It can't be in a chili competition. Anyways, we digress. This is not a chili podcast today. Zach, go ahead. Sorry.
Dixie still takes over all three of them. But
No,
again,
a
digressing
chili
here.
podcast.
Okay, anyway, Sean, you brought up quarterbacks. Obviously, the Bengals do not need one, but I'm just curious to see, is the hype of Caleb Williams actually worth it in your professional opinion?
If I was taking a quarterback this year, he's probably the one I want. I think a lot of the other guys have things that worry me. Like I worry about, like if you're looking at JJ McCarthy, I worry about like, can he be the center of the offense? I don't know. I don't think so. If you're looking at Jaden Daniels, you know, his pressure to sack ratio is very, very bad, like almost historically bad. And one of the things that is the most transferable from college to pros is that pressure to sack ratio. So that has me a little bit worried. If you're looking at Michael Penix, he has some accuracy issues where he had 3 NFL quality wide receivers in his wide receiving core that were bailing him out on some throws that probably shouldn't have been completed. You know, is that going to fly against NFL defenders? That would have me worried. Drake May, I think, Drake May is kind of a weird case where I feel like he would be more of a sure. You would feel like he'd more of a sure thing if he came in last year's draft because he had kind of a shaky year, and now everybody's kind of trying to talk themselves out of him, which is also a weird situation. But he's also a lot younger than these other quarterbacks, and so that would make me think like, okay, well, maybe he's a little less polished here and there, but you know, physical specimen first of all, and a lot younger than the other quarterbacks. Like maybe you can develop him. So he's probably another one who I would take if I can't get Caleb Williams. But yeah, sorry, that was long-winded. All of that to say,
No.
I think Caleb Williams, if you're sitting there at the Bears number 1, I think Caleb Williams is on the card.
That's debatable in my opinion, but that's just because, yeah, personal reasons. Anyway,
Every one of my mock drafts have Caleb Williams number 1.
Well, I mean, he is going to be the rightful number 1. I think the Bears have even leaked it that they're going to take him at 1.
Right,
but I think you bring up the good point about Drake May being the younger one. Can you develop him? If he's the second one off the board with Washington, you pretty much did the same thing with the last guy from North Carolina you just drafted. Did you not? You try to develop him, but I mean, I don't know. Maybe it's a different offense. Maybe it'll work.
Yeah, I mean, it depends so much on coaching. I think the best place that Drake May could land would be the Vikings, to be honest with you. Like their coaching staff and their team and how they're set up, like that would be his best case scenario. But I don't think he drops that far.
Until Jefferson comes to the Bengals.
No more of that talk.
Let's just stop that. Just stop it right now.
He said it, not me.
You started it, Zach. You don't want to put it on the Facebook page. Anyways,
You're right.
Josh, do you have any questions for Sean? All right, well, I think we're into our closing comments here. Sean, you want to start off or do you want to close out? It's up to you.
Oh, I'll start off and just say go Hawks.
Josh, you got anything for him?
Who day?
George,
Yeah,
so you know.
see ya.
All right, Zach, plug the socials and then give us your final thoughts.
So if you want to follow us and you haven't already, please go to our YouTube, Instagram, Threads, X, Facebook. I'm missing some. Or just go to our Beacons page or our newly Profound Live webpage talkinbengals.com. It is up. It's going. You can find all our latest episodes there. If you want to follow us on, remind me, Casey, it's YouTube and Instagram are talking_Bengals, and the rest of them are talking. All of these are without a G because, we're from Kentucky, Bengals, and follow us there. My final thoughts also, I just looked it up and then I lost it, and so it's not going to go well. But can someone please tell me what my boy's name is over at the oversees everything? College scouting, director of college scouting. Anybody? Bueller.
Dang it, give me a second. I know who it is. I can't think.
Hold on, I'll tell you in a minute. It might pop up because he's
Mike
all
Potts,
over the board.
right?
Yeah, Potts.
Potts.
Why I couldn't remember Potts because Casey was calling the kettle black about people being late for the podcast today when he's been late more than I have lately. Just saying.
Anyway,
he just pushes it back.
all right, Nicholas. Since Zach's no longer allowed to talk on this podcast, go ahead.
I can't wait for the draft to be over with so we can stop seeing all the mock drafts. Who day?
Today, indeed, we do hate mock drafts. We did an episode and a half. Last week, we did a very short, brief one. But I hope you guys enjoyed the draft extravaganza. Big thanks, Sean. Thank you for coming on and giving us your expertise. And if you have not gone over and checked out Super Sports yet, you need to. They have a lot of great tools. If you are into using analytics for financial benefit, we don't promote that personally here on the podcast. But people I've heard from do say that Super Sports has great stuff to use to help you get ahead up and understand what the analytics are telling you. So that's another issue if you want to go over there and check that out. Like I said, we don't personally endorse it, but that's because none of us are good at math. So there you go. Other than that, Huday, thank you all for listening. Enjoy the draft season. Do so responsibly, and don't get too crazy over who your team drafts. Good night.
Hooday.
Thank you for listening to Talkin Bengals. Be sure to like and subscribe to Talkin Bengals on Facebook and Instagram at Talkin Bengals. You can also listen to Talkin Bengals on your preferred podcast provider. See you next time. Hooday!